Even has opportunities here, if I'm looking at it right, to overtake Tice and actually sit as the king of the standings here overall if he's able to take this final down. So I think that will be a great thing for us all to see, as we do always extol the virtues of Jarla as one of our top European representatives. But looks like Jarla has dropped webcam this time around, because it's a shame. I was enjoying looking at his handsome face as he was crushing Letta on the other side. There it is. Go. Beautiful, he's back. Worth mentioning as well that Letta did tweet that he's been feeling under the weather the last couple of days as well. So Letta put in this fantastic performance while not feeling 100%. That's why he didn't appear on webcam up until or throughout his entire run through the semi-finals. So great performance from Letta. Congratulations to him. Hope he gets better soon. But we have a very important final ahead of us now with Swidz, the Mage Killer, coming up against the final boss of the Mages here with Jarla.
Swidz off to a good start. Double Venomous Scorpid, along with, to a lesser extent, of course, Samuro, is very, very nice for Swidz. And the reason I like this is because he has just minions to put on the board, and it either forces removal from Jarla, or he starts pushing some damage and at least makes him have to remove them at some point. And all of these resources and mana being used to just remove these kind of insignificant but kind of not minions is, for me, just constantly going in Swidz's favor.
Yep. It was nice to hyper-focus on these tech choices as well. Obviously, Combustion is the card that bites the dust when we get into game number 2. So this Combustion draw here would have been a Ring Toss or arguably a Cthulhu piece, which, worth noting. Combustion here probably better than either of those cards in this scenario.
Yeah, I think I like Combustion too much. But when I see so many players cutting it, I'm like, but what are you going to use to kill stuff in the early game? Yes, there's Devolving Missiles, which is great, but in general, like, Ruined Orb feels like it doesn't actually kill anything. And, well, yeah, okay, you get rid of Combustion, then you rely on almost exactly Brain Freeze in the early game. And you can argue that early game matters less in certain matchups, which is true. I do think Combustion does a lot of damage for not a lot of mana.
It does. It's very matchup dependent, though, and I think there might be a certain expectation of what people's priests list look like, which hasn't quite been met. Because, for example, I think we're seeing a bit of a movement now towards slightly more tempo-based priest lists that play like Mankrik and a few more early minions. Whereas that hasn't always been the case over the last week or so. So again, no one's saying Combustion is a bad card. What they're saying is specifically in my anti-priest deck, I don't necessarily need Combustion, right? Whereas I think if they were staring at their opponent playing all of these, Mankrik versions of the deck, maybe they would still like a Combustion hanging around. Right. But you're not generally expecting your priest opponent to be playing too many minions.
Yeah, though, the Devolving Missiles was used up, and just remember, if we're coming off the back of Letta's matchup that Jarla just played in, the Devolving Missiles is less of a factor, right? There aren't too many absolute must, devolve minions in Swidz's list. So, although that may have seen a bit of a liberal use compared to how we've seen it in previous games, it does make sense in this matchup.
Yeah, Devolving Missiles only a 9 on 10 card in this matchup as opposed to a 10 on 10 card, yeah. I've gone all Irish. I just realised I said 9 on 10. What on earth? Too much OSW review for you, I'm sure.
Don't make me start randomly saying words in an Irish accent to annoy you.
Can't really. Let's have a bit of crack.
So, question here. I'm not
in the Irish sense, of course.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not going to respond to that song because that could get me in trouble. Wow. Moving swiftly on, Tentrasher coming out from the Apexis Blast was actually insane there. I was wondering whether Jarla would have felt maybe even forced to fireball this turn. Get away with it with that Apexis Blast though. Swidz does have Devouring Plague, so he can kill this off if he wants. Now he has a multitude of ways to kill this off if he wants to go for this Shadow of Death. I think I like Raise Dead. I think the Scorpids are actually a relevant problem for Jarla.
The Scorpions didn't actually die, though. They got hit by
they got
missiles
devolved.
into the combustion. Yeah. So his pool is a little bit messed up. I know there was a Murloc Tide Cooler and something else that went in there.
Yeah, you're right.
They're really not high-quality minions.
Decision time.
It is, isn't it? He's come a long, long way with no Incanter's Flow. He's got a very clunky hand, but it's a hand that does already have 26 points of burn in it, right? So there's a decent chance that just with a couple of extra Fireball pickups, Apexis Blast pickups, he can just get over the line here if he sticks to the burn plan.
And also with 777 drop already in hand,
True.
I think he's greatly reducing the sheer impact some of these cards could be, right, with Deck of Lunacy.
True.
What to do?
Jarla taking his time here. I do like Aegwynn just for the sheer amount of extra damage and the fact it's a 5/5, but you always do have to stare at Lab Partner as well for effectively a 0 mana spell damage.
Yeah, particularly with how expensive the burn in hand is.
Yeah.
By which I mean the burn in hand costs the regular amount of mana it's supposed to cost.
How dare it?
Yes, exactly. I'm personally offended by how much the burn in Jarla's hand costs right now.
I do like the Aegwynn though, because you play it this turn as Jarla has done. If it lives, the payoff is there instantly, right? It needs to live for exactly one turn for there to be some decent payoff here. And if it doesn't live, well, fine, you took the risk. Whereas a Lab Partner like changes around what the turn looks like. You'd probably go for card draw instead. But I feel would not have been an overall more impactful turn.
I think it goes a step deeper even than that, right? Because even if it doesn't live, you might be setting yourself up a very strong turn anyway. Because, imagine if your opponent has to go like I don't know, Devouring Plague, Holy Smite this turn, right? Spends that much mana on clearing your 5/5. They're not then playing minions with that mana, right? Which then gives you a potentially clear board for the Mask of Cthulhu on the following turn if you want to go down that route. There's only very specific things, such as Shadow Word Death being in hand or some kind of Sethic turn coming out from Swidz that was, both going to remove that minion and develop a significant amount of stats on board.
Now, the real question here is this too much health for the mask turn?
I think it's a good mask.
He does have other ways, right? He has Ruined Orb, he has Brain Freeze to clear off the minions, and then he could, potentially draw a card first since there's no spell damage involved anyway. He will discover a spell from Ruined Orb too. So it's a tough one, but I would say it's on the cusp of being either too big or just enough.
Yes.
We go for it. The good point as well is, though, he is under no pressure right now. Why not spend your incredibly high cost 7 mana Mask of Cthulhu?
Exactly. Looks like Swid's going to run the Sethic turn now. Having picked up the Apotheosis, I imagine he still starts with Renew. With double Flash Heal in hand, I don't think he has any sense of urgency to have to point that Renew at face. Beast is a good pickup, but interestingly, Auspicious Spirits does give Swidz the ability to just jam giant minions on board for like 3 to 4 consecutive turns, right? With Idol corrupting it and then generating a 10/10 and then continuing that with more Idols and Spirits on the following turns.
Yeah, Swidz definitely has the lot of stuff going for him right now, doesn't he? It's just if Jarla gives him the time to be able to just play like a minion and pass to an extent.
Not too quickly.
Swidz spending his mana, healing back up. This is where decisions get really tough because, again, in like a normal Hearthstone world or deck, you would say, well, just Fireball the Sethic, it's perfect removal. Yeah, that removal goes face, though, so it doesn't feel as good, right? And Jarla is slowly running out of damage, considering Swidz is pretty much back up to full health. There's one Mask been spent, one Apexis Blast been spent.
Yeah, and he's been offered a second deck of Lunacy that he doesn't want at this point. Not looking pretty. See, still a great deal of cards remaining for Jarla, but you can see the reasoning behind not wanting to go Deck of Lunacy that Raven was talking about. Like, there's nothing super high value left in his decks. That Apexis Blast is going to be the most impactful spell, potentially. You know, ending up as a Cenarian Ward or something like that. But with Double Butt Mask and Flame Strike already in the hand, the Deck of Lunacy game plan was not going to get him so far. But you also saw there both Incanter's Flow still remaining in the deck, which I think is big problem number one for Jarla this game.
Of all the 10-10s, that's honestly just the last one you want to see, isn't it? It literally does nothing. It just reminds you of what it can do.
My powers are never truly gone.
I mean, it just effectively taunts your opponent, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I'd rather him Goddess Ethic. And again, you see, like, Jarla hovered the fireball. Does this fireball just go face? Do I kill the minion? He's going to kill the minion. Is there even enough damage in the deck now, Sottle?
It's debatable, right? There's what? There's a Mask of Cthulhu left remaining, and then from there he has one Apexis Blast for 15, Fireball for 21, Runed Orb for 23. If he got spell damage on almost all of that, he's maybe pushing 26. So
and Swidz doesn't heal.
Yeah, and he would need additional assistance from the Runed Orb or from the Evocation or giant amounts of spell damage coming down. So to give a TLDR answer, no, there's not enough damage left in the deck at this point. Jarla needs to create some ultimate game plan.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I was going to say maybe this Aegwynn lives and can hit face once or twice. That would make up a ton of damage, but with double Skeletal Dragon now at 5/11s, they're going to be incredibly tough to get through, especially because Jarla does not have Devolving Missiles to even just reduce these buffs down.
Right. I think he means, I think just based on the discussion from the last turn, I think it has to mean that Jarla needs some kind of Deck of Lunacy out this game, right? Like, I can respect the Evocation this turn, just trying to look for something kind of miraculous, but
I guess the problem is, though, what is that even out in a perfect world? Like, what mana costs does he have left, and what cards would they get? As we know, a lot of the 3-drops actually end up drawing cards as well, which he doesn't overly need, because he's not actually after card draw, he's after impactful cards themselves.
Yep. He does have, what, 4 2-mana cards left remaining in his deck. 5-mana cards are generally the best at, like, generating you a board out of nowhere. You know, Force of Nature kind of thing. Or Stand Against Darkness, just generating huge boards out of nowhere. The problem is that he can then never get a Survival of the Fittest to pay that off if any of those boards actually sticks. But there are other big buffs that you can get from those 5-mana cards, right? Like Arbor Up in particular would be one of the best cards that's available to Jarla at this point, because it does both of those things in one package. Essentially, I'm just saying he needs to roleplay as Token Druid, right? His goal of being a good deck has failed, so he has to try and scam the game by being a bad deck instead.
And nothing looks good here, right? Ring Toss can buy him some time. The Raz kind of looks good to kill the 1/1s, and then you realize it doesn't kill anything else, and those 1/1s instantly come back. So, I don't know. It's not looking too good.
And can attack because they appeared at the end of your turn and not the start of their turn. Yeah. Yep. That's all I see.
It has to be, right? Why, a Deck of Lunacy Incanters Ring Toss, I guess?
Looks like it.
And even though this is, I'll say, unlikely to work out for Jarla, for a few turns of your time, you go for it, right? Why not?
Yeah, I think it's the best chance. Just look for some defensive secrets here to give you a little bit more time. You actually got Mirror Entity and Counterspell. I'm not sure if Ice Barrier was even offered there, but that's what he's ended up with.
And this Onyxia plays around Mirror Entity by not allowing Swidz to have any board space.
True.
Oh, okay. All the discovers. Should pick Holy Smite so that you can smite off one of the whelps to then play I'd Love Yashraj next turn.
I like it. I like where your head's at.
For a second, it looked like Swidz was like doing ice block attack math or something. Because, you know, just the way he ordered the attacks was like, is he thinking about ice block for some reason?
Well, good start, I guess.
It's better than nothing.
Yep.
I really wanted to
Swidz.
spit the drink out.
I know. It was the perfect opportunity for the world's greatest spit take, and he just punted it. It would have been incredible.
I think we would have just offered him the victory there and then.
Yep.
Well, I would have. Then someone would message me telling me I'm just definitely not allowed to do that.
Okay, Torrent, Mask. If Mask hits everything except the
Dragon.
Skeletal Dragon, he's alive. Technically alive, which, as we all know, I guess he can just go Raz now that he's killing the thing. This makes way more sense than the nonsense I was talking about. Oh, he's also now drawn the Raz from its deck, so it has double Aegwynn spell damage on it.
Are you telling me there's a chance?
Kind of. That's insane.
So
He actually has multiple minions in his deck now, right? That he just shuffled in on the previous turn. Was there anything else in his hand that got shuffled into the deck as a minion?
He just said he has multiple minions. I was very confused for a second then. He can't palm reading into damage though, right? For Swidz. Does he get it?
Yeah.
There's power word.
Oh, okay.
He knows.
Okay.
Oh. There was a hope. And honestly, fair play to Jarla. Yes, obviously he got glide into the Raz that paid off for him there, but he had to do something. I think he recognized that. I guess the discussion we should have is whether he recognized that too late or not.
The Raz spell damage, you mean?
No, the lunacy approach in general, because he had lunacy for a
I
while, right? He had lunacy for a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, it wasn't until he had to use that last fireball on the Elucia that I think really the burn plan completely went down the toilet. And I think it was fairly quickly after that that the deck of lunacy hit the board. And you know, on this turn, he was just dealing with what he had to deal with the evocation. I think that was his last out, right? I think, as I said at the time, like, evocation, look for like devolving missiles, maybe. That can perhaps keep you in the game where you can not have the deck of lunacy. But then, you know, having seen what he saw in the following turn, he just went for the deck of lunacy. And it was a great top deck. In terms of keeping the game exciting, it was a great card to find. He very nearly glowed into Swidz' DMs that game, but he was not able to get it done in the end.
And I do think it also highlights a point that I think is easy to forget if you've not really looked at it before, but Aegwynn's effect works whether you have a minion in your deck or not. Yep. Because it's just the next minion you draw. It doesn't attach itself to a minion. It like sits next to your deck, and as you draw the card, it's a minion, then it hops on effectively. So it's just a nice display as well, because honestly, that would have not been the first thing that jumped to my mind, is that Aegwynn would have actually made that Raz live because it got reshuffled in and drawn out again. So that was just pretty cool to see. Obviously doing an absolute ton of damage. But game number 1 is going to Swidz, and that means he's just one game away from victory. And we've seen how much havoc these Ogremancers alone cause mages just this week on stream.
Yes, I entirely agree. I think the mages coming into Swidz' version of the deck, if anything, have a greater impact than the techs that Jarla has on the other side. I think if Jarla went full whammy and really used his slots more on card draw and Rigged Fair Game as well as the Cthulhu, then I think he'd have a borderline unbeatable deck. But I thought that was the case with RDU yesterday, and Swidz still managed to get there against what I would call really the ideal priest tech on the other side from RDU. So Swidz so far has just been the destroyer of mages so far as priest. No one else really this week in Europe has been able to do it, but Swidz has been doing it incredibly consistently.
And look at this opening again from Swidz. Yes, Jarla has the Coin Incanters flow. We're not ignoring that in any way. but double Venomous Scorpion and Mankrik with an insight that will be active from any of the first minions.
He's dead. He takes studies. Okay. All right. I would have snap picked Ray's dead there, but I don't believe in devolving missiles. It's fake news.
I thought, because obviously I was talking at the same time, you spoke over me, which is fine, but I thought you were going to go, Raven! And I was like, where's he going with this? I'm making valid points here. This is not a weird point I'm making. Some kind of weird chant.
Raven, 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 Raven.
I could get used to this.
I thought I'd do it for you, because you're never going to get the opportunity to hear that legitimately, are you? Let's be honest. So.
Very, very true.
Yeah.
Here, though, Scorpion coming down does activate that insight, of course. And all the options in the world here for Swidz. He's got an Ogremancer now as well, so already Jarla's going to have to make something work early on, and getting hold of this board early could be exactly what he needs.
Yeah, extremely similar start to the last game from Swidz, as he goes with the double Scorpid start. It's got Devolving Missile in the previous game. Just noticed, here's another opportunity to make fun of how little I look at cards. Is that Mindrender Elucia in the initiation art?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay. Literally the first time I've looked at that.
I would have been more impressed if you just came out with a random Murloc name. It's like, is that the Murloc in the art there? And it's just like, is that McGurgle from, that other thing? Yeah. We'll be like, yeah, it is. How did you know? I looked it up on the wiki.
Is that Boogie Jammer Bagoobu, the famous Murloc? Yeah.
Okay, though the two spells in hand for Jarla right now from the Cthulhu spells are probably two of the ones he doesn't need. Really looking for the AoE would be pretty sweet for this turn.
What to do? What to do?
Yep. 3 damage AoE would be the nuts. Generating a 6/6, not so much.
Are you sold on Scorpids right now? I think they were glossed over once when the cards were revealed, and every time I see one, I hate it when it's on the other side of the board.
100% in Hysteria decks, in Priest and Warlock. Well, actually, not in Warlock, because you just shouldn't be playing Warlock, because Warlock sucks. But if you can play Hysteria in your deck, I think having Scorpid there makes sense as well. Not only because it gives you more opportunities to discover Hysteria, which is just a bonkers bananas card, but they just go so well together nicely, right? Like, I think when you're a Hysteria deck, one of the best ways you can be punished is just by your opponent playing one big minion and not giving you good Hysteria targets. So you can then just play your own poisonous minion, Hysteria, their big target, into your Scorpid. It just gives you the natural way to play around that.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, right on time.
Hey, Jarla does have more of Cthulhu. I guess, this is the best reason to run Cthulhu.
It is.
In your mage deck, to just one-shot an Ogremancer. It's literally just the best.
Yes.
Oh. Honestly, for me, that turn has actually kept Jarla in the game, because I think that was slipping away very quickly.
100% agree, yeah. It's really the one answer in the deck that does not punish super hard. However... Derek made a comment in our Discord a little while ago saying that Swidz was really good at going Auspicious Spirits into Skeletal Dragon. He's also really good at going Raised Dead into Ogremancer, as he manages to hit that on multiple occasions so far throughout his run through the semi-finals and final today, but he is once again back in a dominating position. And as we commented last turn, Raven, that Maw of Cthulhu was basically the only good card in Jarla's deck for dealing with an Ogremancer. So with that now no longer being an option, he's going to have to find more creative ways to do it. But the spell damage from the Blood Mage Thanos actually means Heart of Cthulhu does a very nice job here as well.
Yeah, that is probably the best I've seen Ogremancer's dealt with back-to-back turns all weekend, honestly. But Swidz's mascot is in hand with the Skeletal Dragon, not from Auspicious, but still. Is this a time to just pull the trigger on the Devolve? Guarantee 3 hits on the dragon?
So he makes a 4-drop, right? That's still a minion that needs to be dealt with on a lot of occasions. I think quite often when you devolve, like, it's either a must-kill minion or it's something that you just then can entirely ignore. But Does this fit the category of must-kill minion? I suppose it might.
There was some 3 health, 4 drops, right? You can just Firework Elemental.
True. Not that one.
No. But I still think this is more manageable, right? Than 9 health on board in 1 minion. If Swidz then duplicates it, then the Devolving will do arguably less, because it could hit both.
Agreed.
God, this is always the turning point in every game of this matchup, is the second a fireball is not aimed at face, you start asking questions.
Hothead, very nice pickup here. Is this not a Scorpid turn? I guess you can go Mancrick instead. Yeah, sure. Alright, I'm on board. Just if it was a Scorpid turn, obviously you want to get the Scorpid down first, just there's an off chance things change, but yeah, playing Mancrick here instead makes sense.
I'm definitely starting to see the value of this earlier minion Priest build, because I saw Priest not in the too distant past that were cutting Sethic from the list, and as in cutting all minions from the list, it felt like, apart from like a random Ysera. So, I am definitely appreciating the Scorpids in there, the Mancrick, just anything early to start fighting for board, which means you don't have to have huge heal turns in late game or, anything crazy going on towards the end of the game to survive.
Jarla on his 8 mana turn. Turn 8. This isn't Battlegrounds, you don't need to make that distinction, Subtle. Still has 18 cards left in his deck at this point. I guess if you're playing Druid, it can be an important distinction. But yeah, with 18 cards still left in the deck, not where he wants to be, you want to have turboed through much more of your deck at this point. Obviously, he has had the Cthulhu spells in there in the first place, inflating that deck size. Has already drawn 3 of those, so he's actually not far away from being able to threaten draw Cthulhu every turn, which will create a paradigm shift in the matchup, right? Because suddenly Swidz then has to panic about having minions plus his own health exceed 30 every single turn for the rest of the game, which is a very, very tricky thing to do.
Yeah, up until now, I think Jarla's just, well, even including now, I guess, Jarla's played a very fair game, kind of going like 1 card for 1 card against Priest. Obviously that... What are you laughing at?
He's played a fair game. He did play a fair game. Draws 3 cards. Yeah.
But I'm that good. But what I mean is, it's been like when you like just play a card or so a turn in line with your opponent as mage, something is going wrong, right? Yes. Like you want to be doing silly things every single turn that your opponent starts getting annoyed with, basically, and that's not been the case this game. So maybe Jarla, with this fireball in hand, is just thinking, if I can just get Cthulhu and then the fireball plus X back up will be enough, even with a minion or 2 on the board.
Wow. Okay, sure. I think the primary motivation behind that sort of weird end of turn hysteria is the taunt minion appeared, which suddenly made Swidz go, oh dear, I can't play around rigged fair game anymore. So he knew he had to eliminate that taunt just so he could connect the 4/6 to face, which is what he ended up doing. Because yes, this remaining secret, as Raven punned accidentally, is a rigged fair game.
Accidentally on purpose, my speciality.
Yep.
Drake Totem though, that could be game winning, as we've seen before.
Finally, the flows are starting to come out now for Jarla.
Still a lot of health on board.
Yes.
Currently not the best way to deal with it. Maybe this turn is like the setup turn, play out maybe the 3-drop along with Incanters, and then set up for a Flame Strike just to try and clear house a little bit.
Yes, agreed. Fully on board. Sign me up. That seems like the plan.
Or that 3-drop, I guess. I was just looking at the one that had more health.
Well, he gets to play both.
Yeah, I guess you can play them all now, yeah.
Yep. Just good. Luminary, just a bonkers card to get off Font of Power most of the time. Okay, yep, sure, good, yep. Okay, cool. Wait, he played an Elemental last turn. That's insane.
See, I told you, Trick Tome needs to make it into the core list of Spell Mage.
Yep. Did right? This is an elemental. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Is it even more powerful than a priest deck, Subtle? Look at this. It's actually hilarious.
It's good immediate recognition, right? Like, Swidz has wasted 0 time on spotting the play that ramps his hand by a ton of mana here.
Imagine if this happened, but against Letter's Priest.
Oh,
It'll literally be an
that's what you
infinite
want.
turn. It'll just be an infinite
that's it.
turn.
I figured it out. That's how he 2-0'd the mages to get out of his group. That just happened every game. He just generated an initiation and shot an arcane luminary every game. That's what happened.
Move quickly.
Also, in a good way, but a weird position I feel for Swidz to be in here, that it's late in the game, yet he doesn't have to consider his own health right now because he's on 27, which is very strange because he's not even used a big Apotheosis turn. He's still got Samuro in hand, as we can see. Like, he's not actually been under any real threat so far, so it's looking good for Swidz. Jarla has this Flame Strike to help clear up, which means, unfortunately, not going to see the grand finale this turn.
Oh.
Lame. I wouldn't be upset at Oasis ally here.
Yeah, I think Oasis is definitely worth considering.
Oh, he didn't pick Oasis.
I guess he has Counterspell and Netherwind then. Yep, that is what he has.
Time runs out on me.
2 grand finale. Actually, I would pick Flame Strike in this scenario. Yeah, I like it.
Grand finale, summon an 8/8 elemental, Fire School.
You don't pick the
Okay.
What's wrong with that?
I mean, I understand it's firework. I get it. It's just a little bit weird.
Do you get it? Fire
Do get it.
works.
Yep. No, I understand. My brain is operating on a level to understand.
I don't know what you don't understand here, Sol. Have you tried to light fireworks with an ice cube before? It doesn't work very well. It's not a frost spell, is it?
I mean, you can create fire by rubbing 2 sticks together, so maybe it's a
You
nature
can't say
spell.
2 ice
What do you mean?
cubes.
Rubbing 2 ice cubes together? Just
Friction will
frantically.
build up, and instead of melting, they just create fire.
Yep, that is 100% how thermodynamics works. Yes.
Must move quickly.
I mean, a lot of healing offered here for Swidz. He'd go for Luminance, though. I'm a little bit surprised. I feel like just having 1 guaranteed healing spell in hand would have been alright, but maybe Swidz just thinks he's far enough ahead that he doesn't need it.
It's tough, right? Because you've got to approach it from both angles. Like, you need to be able to make minions to get on board, not only because they pressure Jarla, but also because they also function to soak up Cthulhu damage if it gets to that point of the game. So that's what Gift of Luminance leads towards, but then obviously the healing kind of deals with the other threat of just straight up getting burned out of the game. It's just so tough when you have all the angles covered, as Jarla does here, and like, I don't think, again, this game is going to get anywhere close to Cthulhu Town, right? Even with this absolute insanity of a turn coming out here from Jarla.
It's weird, right? Because although, yes, in this exact second timeline...
Jarla? Jarla?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, there we go, we got it. But although obviously with this exact draw, yes, he clearly does not need Cthulhu to end the game, as Jarla does take it and even up this series.
Yeah.
Because he drew so many, if his draw was like the other way round, he could have played the last Cthulhu piece, right? and then had Cthulhu as a draw. So it's so weird that, like, yes, it wasn't relevant right then because he drew the burn half of the deck, but if he'd done it the other way around, he would have just had a legitimate Cthulhu plan to come out pretty soon. I think there was 4 cards left in his deck on that last turn, so could have been very likely here, but a game I honestly didn't foresee going into Jarla until the last couple of turns. Swidz looked like he had control of that game for a long time, even with the Ogremancer being cleaned up in a, well, as an efficient way as you're ever going to do it against Priest. So yeah, I think that was a really good win for Jarla, and it's all going to come down to this final game, Salter.
Yeah, and this has been much more of my experience of playing this matchup, right, where this was not like a blowout Incanter's Flow, draw the nuts kind of game, right? Jarla did have one early Incanter's Flow, but his hand got very, very clunky from that point onwards. But you don't have to just draw the turbo nuts and have your entire deck in your hand by turn 10 to be able to beat Priest, right? Which I think is what a lot of people's perception of the matchup is. Jarla just took it slow, he parceled out his resources very nicely, he made sure he had clears in reserve for some of the key things that he would need to deal with, such as the Ogremances, which he had 2 very effective clears for with the Maw and with the spell damage AoE from the Cthulhu spell. So he was then able to just go longer, and as long as you can stay in the game as mage and not be facing down this insurmountable board that you'll never be able to deal with, as long as you're in the game, your deck will eventually do something broken. That's the key, right? As long as you can just keep waiting, eventually double discounted Springwater comes into the hand, and then, as always, Raven, I'm never wrong, it's just lethal as soon as that happens, as it was in that game.
What I find very interesting about that game is it was almost ended up being a weird benefit that Jarla didn't really deal any face damage for most of the game, because, for example, the Samuro and Apotheosis was just in hand all game for Swidz, whereas if there was, like, 10, 12-ish damage dealt, Swidz could then go, great, Samuro Apotheosis, clear the board, boom, heal back up to full. Even though you can argue that, well, if you never take damage, you never need healing, it would have used resources and sort of removed some of Jarla's burn cards from the game, right? So it's just a very odd game. I've not seen it happen in that fashion to that extent, where the priest is just on full health all game, then dies. So it's a very, very strange one for me, that one, but looks like we are getting ready to go into our game number 3, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but Jarla did change to secondary. Sorry if you mentioned it, Sal, I just can't recall, but he did go to that secondary deck for the next 2 games here, so he's on that secondary once again.
Well, whether or not we referenced it specifically, we've been talking about Cthulhu spells the entire game.
Yeah, but I just wanted to remind everyone that now he's going to be on this secondary deck for games 2 and 3. Yes. That's all.
Yes, that's fair. But yeah, I do think it's interesting, because I think, 2 of the best aggressive decks, if you want to label Mage as an aggressive deck, with Spell Mage and Weapon Rogue, are both very capable of winning games, having dealt sometimes 0 damage by turn 8, turn 9, right? Like, they're still very, very capable of getting there because of that ability to just save up so much damage. And because they're capable of doing that, there are some matchups where I think it's actually correct to play that way. Like, not to waste damage early, so you essentially just shut off all the healing cards that your opponent's playing. When you're dealing with the likes of Priest or Lifesteal Demon Hunter, for example, that can heal up in big chunks, just don't take those big chunks off your opponent in the first place, and just leave those lifesteal cards dead in hand, and just save up more for a 1-turn kill, 2-turn kill towards the end of the game, which is a very, very viable way to play a lot of matchups with a fair few decks in the metagame right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see how this one goes here, as again, Swidz, I think, has a pretty nice opening. The palm reading and the Mancreak has an Ogremancer locked, loaded, and ready to go. But Jarla did get off to a pretty nice start himself, getting Incanter's Flow on. He has multiple ways to draw cards in the following turns, and can really go off himself, even with this Jandis and Keywarden in hand to generate some potential more damage. He's looking good for both players, honestly. Maybe even give the edge to Jarla in this.
Finally, a second chance.
I do like this decision too, though, just contesting the Scorpid as best he can here. Gives Swidz immediately a decision to be made, and I think that decision might lead him very quickly to just going for an early devolving missiles check here with the power word Fortitude, giving him the ability to just get a massive minion in play. It will leave behind a 5 health minion, however, going into Coin Apexis Blast, so maybe that just isn't even worth it, because at that point, there's several good answers that Jarla could have on the other side, right?
Yeah, it's tough though, because for me, the other option is Mankrik trade, in which it's weak to coin a Pexis Blast anyway.
True.
So what's the play? I think Swidz should go for the power word and just have devouring missiles to hopefully kill the 5-drop if it happens. I know that's a hope and not a guarantee, but I do like this, because now if there's not an answer, he can just play Mankrik, or if there is an answer, he can play Mankrik. If it is a Pexis Blast, he can then review the situation with the health total.
You see Jarla's reaction immediately to the Deck of Lunacy draw. Just, oh, why do I have to make this decision?
It's nearly unnerved.
Yeah. Pro tip, Jarla, you don't. Just take it out of your deck, then you don't have to make that decision anymore.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because those boxes are ticked. He has card draw. It's early enough in the game, and he just doesn't have any of the 7 costs in hand. All these boxes are lining up, but he's already played Incanters, and he has card draw in his hand, so he could just kill him instead. These are really just the 2 core options, and we're seeing decision being made now. He's just going to go for this, and if Lunacy's not being played now, it's not going to be planned to play it for the rest of the game.
Yeah, the problem, I think the real big problem he has here is that he's also a Cthulhu deck, right? So if he goes Deck of Lunacy, he is destroying his Cthulhu win condition, but also because he's gone Cthulhu to begin with, then Incanter's Flow, to then Deck of Lunacy, those spells, you just get garbage, because they eventually end up, if you count all that through, as 7-drop spells, 7-mana spells, which are kind of all board clears, which is absolutely not what you're interested in this matchup, right? You want board generation, you want damage, you want buffs. That's what you want. You don't want to be focused on clearing your priest opponent's board every turn, and that's generally what you're going to end up with 7-mana spells, and Jarla at this point currently has at least 3 of those in his deck if he was going to go Deck of Lunacy. Not to mention the 7-mana spells naturally in his deck, as you were talking about, are now Libram of Hope, which against priest is not as powerful as it is against, say, Face Hunter. So I think, again, absolutely correct decision not to go down the Deck of Lunacy line here.
He doesn't have the Cthulhu piece he wants, though, for this turn, which is that Maw, of course, to one-shot the Ogre. He does have Fireball Ping, though. And I think, although it hurts, it's the correct choice.
Yeah, Ogremancer dies, so the game may continue. Otherwise, you're looking for a Psyche Split to get generated, an Apotheosis to come down, any of those things, and it's potentially a huge game ender. But Swidz is a gamer. He's just hit this every game so far.
He is an Ogremancer video game player.
I don't see why it shouldn't continue. There is the secret on the other side, which is Netherwind Portal, but obviously through nature of it being Netherwind Portal, we know that Swidz has to test spell-based secrets still. Gets the good news. Deal with that now with the Scorpid. Just drop Ogremancer number 2, get on with his life. But there was always the fear, right, of what secret he was having to deal with on the other side with the Raised Dead.
The good thing was, though, if it was Counterspell, he spent 0 mana. He has plenty of other stuff to do, palm reading, Mankrik. He would have still been fine, but obviously would have preferred to have the Ogremancer and, got rewarded for it there. And Jarla back to square one. Let's just close your eyes and let Jandis take the wheel.
I wonder.
Because I know that doesn't sound great, but everything else looks even more painful.
Yeah, I do struggle to see a better solution. If there's a better solution, I don't think it's in his hand right now, so it would involve just drawing from this point to try and find a solution, but I'm not sure what comes out at that point.
Like the 3 damage AoE, you could argue sets up some better removal for the Ogre, but what if it gets healed or buffed or whatever? That's the problem, right? Any 2-turn setups against Priest are never guaranteed because they can heal.
Right.
Yeah, I think you just play it and you say, you know what, where's my double Earth Elemental?
I wonder.
It's not even the right meme anymore, Raven. You need Earth Elemental and then the 1/1 Death Rattle thing. That's the dream now. That's the actual zero downside.
So the cool kids get now.
Yeah. Alright. I'm Trasher. Ooh. Devouring Plague looks unpleasant for Jarla this turn.
Yeah, I think you can start with palm reading though.
You could also just play a Plagued Proto Drake, right? He knows where the illusion is because the trade's already happened. So if he's willing to take damage on his Ogremancer, he could just trade through, trade into the 5/3, and then just leave a 2/1 on board and just play an 8/8 Death Rattle thing.
Yeah, he could also have gone Plague and then Zyrella. Well, could just do that instead.
Could just do that instead. I believe that Raised Dead is still guaranteed filth at this point. I think it's Ogremancer #1 and the taunt that just died. I think that's it.
Has he not had 2 taunts?
I don't think so.
Yeah, you might be right. I think it was only 1. For some reason, I think he had 2, but I think I'm wrong. Ooh, yeah, gonna go for Scorpion.
I would have just wanted to guarantee Ogremancer, I think. I would have just taken my 2/2 just to, in order to not sacrifice there being an Ogremancer involved as well. Tough decision though, Rope was burning, and obviously you've got a million things running through your head at that point. We might even just be wrong about what the res pool actually is, in which case, as soon as you get past 2 minions, adding the Scorpid to that is definitely correct, I think.
1 card. So much nightmares. It's so insane. Jarla again has to work out what to do. Again, he has Fireball Ping. But the more he's doing this, the less damage he's actually even got to end this game.
Again, with Cthulhu in the deck, though, he doesn't have to panic. As long as he can just keep going, keep digging through his deck, not fall too far behind, not hit just like an irretrievable board state on the other side from Swidz, he's still very much in the game with Cthulhu. But also, the flip side of that argument is true. Just because you have Cthulhu in your deck does not mean that if it goes to fatigue, you win. That's not the case either. The Cthulhu Battlecry does not read win the game. It can be played around. I think Priest is a particularly good class at just putting massive health things in play and healing back up to 30 to be able to play around that Cthulhu outcome.
And what's very good about Swidz' position, one, he has a great next turn. Another Ogremancer. He can drop Mankrik if he wants to as well to fill that turn out. He's going to test for Entity, makes sense. Going to get the check and done. Most importantly, Swidz keeping, or forcing, should I say, Jarla to deal with these boards. Look at Jarla's deck count. 20. He's online with a Priest. That's embarrassing. Right?
Yes.
Because he's not had a free turn to cast any of this card draw. Because he needs to deal with these Ogremances. He needs to deal with this board every turn. He's on 17 health. He's got 19 cards left. So even though he does have Cthulhu, that's only the single piece of Cthulhu we've seen all game so far? At the time,
Again,
not be
that does mean that his deck started 4 cards thicker than his opponent, right? Which does sort of count a little bit towards the discrepancy in card draw. But yes, I said the same thing last game on turn 8, that you really want to be further through your deck. And that was, I believe, 18 cards remaining last game on turn 8. And Jarla is 1 card even behind that at this point.
Like in this matchup specifically, right? Because Priest does not really draw cards.
Yep.
Another Incanters.
Gets there. Ogremancer down. And as far as we can see, that is the end of the Ogremancer train, at least for now, for Jarla. So we can at least start to think about establishing some kind of proactive game plan from this point.
Look at this turn, though. There's double Sethic and buffs. Gonna go Proto Drake. Okay. Mainly one of 2 ways to go about this, right? Drop the 1 big scary minion or have a Sethic turn. I think I would lean towards the Sethic turn, but maybe after we've just been talking about pressure, Swidz deems that's just not enough.
I just want a big boy. A large lady. I have no idea the gender of this dragon. I'm not here to judge.
Well, we are, but judge gameplay.
True. Speaking of which, I think huge impact from Minor Ender Lucia potential this game, right? Because Mage is now permanently at below half health, right? 15 HP and below, probably for the rest of the game now at this point. Which means if any burn builds up in hand, it's going to be extremely cheap because it's been flowed multiple times at this point. And that means that we are going to say, well, at that point, if you have any burn in your hand and I draw Minor Ender Lucia, I might be able to just kill you with your own hand. Which leaves Jarla in a real catch-22 situation because I'm sure Jarla will think about that. He might adjudge that he cannot beat it and therefore just not plan to play around it, but I'm sure he'll be thinking about it. If he does want to play around it, it means he needs to incrementally throw burn at his opponent, which is kind of what Priest wants you to do, right? We had that exact discussion at the start of this game as to how effective what Jarla did at the end of last game was, where he threw so much burn out in one turn that Priest just did not have time to play around it. So the trickle-down effect of how low health Jarla has been pushed down to this game is not to be ignored.
Oh!
Let's go.
Noises! Yeah, I don't think he needs to particularly go for it right now.
It's 4 off lethal right now. It's pretty close already.
Yeah, but giving him Sethics and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not saying do it at all, no. Just pointing out, he's close. He's real
saying.
Close.
Go for the Apotheosis here, the cheaper targeted spell. And Swidz also chose just to play the one Sethic and not go... I'm not even going to say all in, because that's just wrong, but not commit both Sethics to the board this turn. Gives himself a little bit more mana to play with.
Right.
At the expense of less cards generated, of course.
Choose quickly.
If he just power infusions this dragon.
Whoa, Tempo Lucia? I hadn't considered this.
Okay.
His hand currently contains nothing that deals with this situation. However, it does contain a Sethic Veil Weaver.
Should he?
And
Should he
so...
have smited his own Sethic, maybe?
Smited his own Sethic. Why?
Oh, devolving.
Just to not have the smite.
Just to not give Sethic smite for Jarla, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
This 3 mana, maybe open up a chain, you know. Scary.
I'm not entirely sure, but I think I hate this Mind Render Elysia.
Yeah, not a big fan myself. And that's not even because we obviously know what's in both players' hands. It just felt like he gave him too much.
Oh, never mind.
It's okay, he'll get Devolving Net from this. Close.
Swidz is just a genius.
I think the reason I don't like it is it didn't actually set up lethal, right?
No, it didn't.
And I think that's like probably my biggest criticism of the play.
Right.
He has ended up with a Primordial Studies, of course, which could help. So could Venomous Scorpid, too. Shadow Form? Seems good.
Shadow Form seems fantastic.
Yeah, that is setting up lethal.
Apotheosis is 1 damage off lethal here, I believe. The, Powered Fortitude would have been lethal immediately. But Shadow Form just has to be the pick. We've seen one giant mess be made out of Shadow Form gaming this week, Raven, but I can't imagine that anything else can be chosen here.
Even if this is just heal self, Shadow Form, go.
Yeah.
It just looks good. Does he have full knowledge of the secret now? I'm not sure at this point. I've lost track.
I would... He knows it's not spell-based. He knows it's not Ice Barrier. So, yes. And it might still be rigged fair game, but there's that's not going to be relevant, right? Like he's going. I think it might still be rigged fair game from his perspective.
But I think he will just hit face, and that plays around both remaining possibilities, which is what it is, Oasis ally, and Rig Fair Game. Obviously, he's going to continue to deal face damage for the rest of the game now.
And this is just the Hunter setup. Put them to 1, they almost certainly can't heal. You have a hero power that deals 2 that they cannot stop. And just glancing at it, I'm pretty sure that is going to be it, unless what, the Key Warden?
Key Warden?
Is there a card? Wait, is Deck of Lunacy Cram Session? Does that ever exist?
Sure, there's another possible out. Yeah, he can also just go with Sethic instead, of course. Sethic. Okay. Yep, Sethic is going to get him priest spells. Obviously, now he discovers he gets another mage spell, but since it's something to point, that means he now gets another priest spell.
Like, don't you dare get a healing spell. Don't.
Shadow Word Death into Renew or Flash Heal or Desperate Prayer. Oh,
that's
so
better
close.
Lethal.
Well played.
Jarla passes, Swidz needs to pass. No! Okay, that is going to be game. That is going to be series, and that is going to be us for the week. Swidz taking the victory over Jarla, and the Control Priest showing it's got what it takes to even take down a flurry of mages, honestly, that we've had in the European region. In this region this week for Specialist, it's been such a small sample of Hearthstone classes submitted. It's been predominantly mage with some priest and a tiny sprinkling of other things, but really it's all been about the mages and priests this week, and I guess we have our class winner for now, Sottle.
For sure, yeah, but I mean more so just Swidz himself, because looking at the stats again, Swidz seems to be the only priest out of the 4 that was really able to farm on mage. I should say the only priest out of the 3, because inexplicably Letter, the 4th priest on the priest deck that's even worse against mage, has been able to get the job done against mages largely, apart from the one time where we got to watch him. But the other 2 control priests seem to have had extremely limited success against mage, whereas Swidz has just walked through them. Just like, I don't know what the big deal is. Like, what are you guys talking about? You just play Ogremancer on 5 and then raise dead it 12 times and then the game's over. Why aren't you guys doing this?
Yeah, it's a huge deal as well, not only just for the matchups, but for Swidz himself. Just to give you an idea, Swidz had, I believe, let me just triple check, 1 point going into this week.